Hi everyone, I'm Rob King and welcome to the retrospective of the Irn-Bru Turbo Cider. Today we are going to look at the vital statistics, the schedule, the costs, the price per pint and evaluation to see how it fits in the ranking of all of the home brews this year, and finally some lessons learned. Let's start with the vital statistics. Not much to talk about on the vital statistics other than that very interesting 7.35% ABV. This was the sugared version of the Irn-Bru, hence the yeast had more to munch through than we did in the sugar-free version. 7.35 actually was quite a nice end of the spectrum and I was very happy with that. For carbonation as well, I used the set and wait method that mostly worked out okay, though it is hard to maintain that carbonation in the keg, it seems. The schedule was a quick one too. Now there was a lot of waiting around, hoping for some clarity to come through in that final result. Unfortunately, it just never arrived. In the end, it spent 20 days in primary. I was hoping for some of that clarity to finally come through. Unfortunately, it didn't. I moved to secondary for another week. It still didn't. So it was really 36 days before I finally tasted the final result. This should have all been ready in a couple of weeks in reality. But what about the costs? Now, the most significant cost, of course, comes from the apple juice and from the Irn-Bru itself, which all came in at £7.50 of the total £8.39. We then had 26 pence worth of yeast, some DAP yeast nutrient and that glycerine for mouthfeel really sort of rounded out all the total costs. £8.39 then translates with 4 litres in the keg at £1.19 per pint. Not bad. Yes, I'm filming this in the morning. Cheers. Now, how does all of this rank up? Now do check out the shootout for all the detailed breakdown of this evaluation, but let's just focus on the final results. Now, the aroma here was absolutely terrific. We came in at an 8, a very, very good. I really did enjoy that aroma. Flavour came in at a 7, which is good, but I am tempted to nudge that score up just a little bit based on the shootout. I was very much enjoying the final result just before the keg ran out. Overall then though, that lack of clarity, it was a murky brown, just gave us a 6. Okay, but not great. Which in our table of rankings puts us in at position number 6, just above the fake and just below the punk. That's not a terrible place to be. For a quick one though, there were still some lessons learned. Lesson number 1 are the differences between the 1901 and the sugar-free. The 1901 came in at 1.056 original gravity, whereas the sugar-free came in at 1.041. After fermentation, the original fermented down quite dry, whereas the sugar-free fermented down still to a sweet, medium sweet type final flavour. That was probably the most significant difference between these two. If I hadn't screwed up the clarity, this would have been a very, very tough competition. Lesson number 2 is that Fermentis Safe Cider TF6, the Tutti Frutti cider yeast. Now, I didn't specifically mention it during the video, but the yeast nutrient is very, very specifically the DAP variety. It benefits from additional nitrogen as a nutrient. Lesson number 3 is condensing that Irn-Bru. Now, I condensed it for 2.5 hours and it came down to 1.2 litres. I did need an extra 22 minutes, as it turned out, to condense that final amount. So 3 hours is definitely the sweet spot to take 4 litres down to about 800 millilitres. Lesson number 4 is a reminder to self, i.e. don't forget to add the tea bags, but also a second reminder, don't leave them in too long. Those tea bags provide tannin, which helps with the final result of the mouthfeel. However, if you leave them in too long, you can end up with a murky brown tea coloured final cider, which is what happened on this occasion. Lesson number 5 is that glycerin, which I often add to a turbo cider because it adds a little bit of sweetness, but most significantly more fullness to the mouthfeel and just a tiny amount of viscosity that makes the drink more full and not simply just quite light and thin. Now this is particularly true in this instance where it fermented very dry, and I was hoping for the glycerin just to bring up that sweetness level, that fullness level, and honestly I do think it worked. Lesson number 6 is tailoring that ABV. Now interestingly I added 2 bottles and that came out at 7.35%, but I did also calculate this to understand what would it have been if I'd have only added 1 bottle, and the estimate is it's worth about 0.005 gravity points per bottle, so if I'd only condensed a single bottle it would have come in at around 6%, so that is an alternative choice. The final lesson is lesson number 7, and this is my contaminated demijohn, which I used every cleaning method at my disposal, from rice to normal sanitizer to normal oxy, finally to bleach, and nothing shifted it. I do not know whether that move to secondary also contaminated my final result, so that demijohn is in the bin. But I just didn't notice it in advance. I am going to examine my demijohns a little closer when I clean them, just in case some of these older demijohns are getting a bit damaged. Well, that's it for our lessons learned. Thank you very much for watching. Do like, subscribe, and feel free to comment. It's not a beer, it's a coffee, but cheers everyone, happy homebrewing.